that book with the hopes that you will read it. This book has to go to the highest group of lawmakers that we have. It has to go to the federal legislature. So I figure I'll start with our local rule makers, our local legislature here. I've brought 10 books here. I challenge you to read this book and then to use your connections to move it up into those places where they can actually implement this. Right now, we've got legislature that's bipartisan that's being worked on to do with infrastructure. They both seem to agree that we have to do something about it. So we're going to get some legislature to deal with that. This is an ideal time, but it's also the time. We have to get it there before everything gets set. So really, that's about all I have to say. I won't take any more time. The books are there with Heather, and she has a copy for each of you. I'd really appreciate it if you read it and then pass it on to those connections that you do have that can do some good for this.
Thank you, Howard.
All right.
Have a good evening, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Craig, you're followed by Elizabeth, then Brittany.
Well, I pretty much like how things are going too. Before I get to my main comment, just a quick aside. I went to the Universal Waste compost mulch event this weekend, and I'm the only person that took mulch the whole time. I came near the end. And it's because they didn't get out the holiday mailer until Friday, the day before, 3 days ago. Some people did come for compost, but it's not an isolated incident insofar as they fail to pick up my trash or recycling about once a month, and they come late in the day, so if it's a windy day, the cans blow down the hill and stuff goes all over the place. And 50 years in Malibu, we never had this problem until we had Universal Waste. So when it comes time to renegotiate the contract, I hope you are looking towards service as much as you're looking towards cost. Okay, main comment, dark sky ordinance. Last I think the city did anything on that was in July when the draft circulated, and I talked to people at the Community Alliance, and they're not really sure what's going on at the city now. So I thought I'd come down and kind of give a little nudge and ask what the status is and maybe tell you a few things you haven't heard about it in all the discussion. I'm coming to it late. For a long time I thought this was about stadium lights at the other end of town, and suddenly it hit home when I have one neighbor who's put up thousands of little lights like holiday lights, but they're for security, and they've wrapped up their palm trees, 8 of them, really tall and all around the house. And when I look to the Queen's Necklace now from my dining room, I see what looks like an oil refinery. And then down the hill, somebody got a permit for a full rooftop deck that they've put 18 really bright lights on. And when they turn that on, I see the night sky, the ocean, everything's dark, and an airport right down in front of me. So it hit home, and I started researching and thinking about it, and it occurs to me that there are a lot of lights on PCH that haven't been there in the past, on people's driveways. Carriage lamps, lights that can be distracting to drivers, I think, and I wonder how much accidents may be caused just because there's so many little point sources of light that kind of make seeing the traffic more difficult. And those lights aren't needed now because security cameras can operate in really low light. So we're seeing this proliferation of people concerned about lighting and security and putting the lights up when they could put up a very inexpensive security camera and they don't need the lights at all. So I could say more about it. There are other benefits. If you had to trade out fixtures, you'd be helping tradies in town, electricians, maybe even some designer types, or even like Norm or Howard, for example, could be getting a little work out of this, get a little sales tax revenue from the new fixtures that are pointing down. So just where are we on the dark sky ordinance?
Craig, we'll get a short update for that. If you wouldn't mind providing that address, if you can, to Heather, so because I know that I don't believe that the holiday lights are allowed to be up year round, so we can try to get those removed.
They get them for 2 months of the year, and I have more to talk with the neighbor before I want to make it a formal thing. I'm just saying it as an example for the city.
We hear you. And we'll stick around. We'll get a little update for you. Elizabeth.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Stevens, and I'm a resident of Sycamore Park. And as some of you may know what's going on in our neighborhood, as the MRCA posted that we are now public and there's a trailhead, which there is no trail that exists in our neighborhood. But we personally bought, as many of us did, we're only 60 homes in that neighborhood. We have one ingress and egress in that neighborhood. And he has bought a residentially zoned parcel, just as we all did. We all have private deeded easement rights with reciprocal easements. And he plans on coming in, or he's already attempting to come in and circumvent our easement rights. This is the most powerful unelected official who runs 2 agencies. We hear that, oh, this is a civil matter. This is not a civil matter. Each neighborhood is being picked off one by this man. And if he sets his sights on your neighborhood, he's relentless coming after you. So every neighborhood is forced to hire an attorney and protect their private property rights. We have an LCP that is supposed to protect, and we're supposed to comply with as residents. And I believe that the MRCA and the SMMC should also comply with our LCP. So I'm asking this council if they could please ask our city attorney to explore our LCP and see how they can protect not only Sycamore Park, but we also have another neighborhood who is in the crosshairs and is facing the same thing that we are going to be facing. And I don't think that this is fair that we have to handle this individually. I think the city should be coming and supporting us and finding a way to have everybody be cohesive. I'm fine with having public trails, but I don't believe that you can have one agency buy in a private neighborhood that is zoned private and change the use. And that is what he's doing. He's changing the use from residential to recreational with multi-purpose. He's already wanting to bring classes in, and it's just going to start from there. So I would really appreciate it if you could ask, to put it on the agenda and explore our LCP to see how you can protect the citizens and not only us. And also, we are ingress and egress, and just today, the Malibu station just zoned us extreme fire area. So that is public safety on top of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Brittany? And Brittany, you're followed by Melody.
Good evening, I'm Brittany Stevens. I'm speaking on behalf of the Sycamore Park residents. I'd like to reiterate what Elizabeth says. We're a small neighborhood of residents, and we're your voters, and we're asking for your help and for your protection as a city. The MRCA is trying to change the use and our neighborhood character, and there are lots of other neighborhoods that are on the MRCA and the SMMC list that are going to be next. So our question is how the MRCA can ignore the LCP, but also just the Malibu zoning laws and change the use, like she said, from residential to multi-use or recreational. You can't do that by just buying a single-family residential zoned lot. My kind of example that I've been talking to people with is that's kind of like someone buying in any one of your neighborhoods, just buying a normal lot right next to you and putting up an amusement park. I don't think you could do that, and I don't think you would like that if one of your neighbors did that. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, where he bought something, that the MRCA bought a residential lot and is trying to change it into something else. And we don't believe that that's right or fair or does follow the law. So that's why we would like your help as City Council to put this item on the agenda. If you could please explore issues and options that you might have to help protect us, but to help protect every other neighborhood in Malibu that this might happen to next. So this really is precedent setting, and so that's why we're really asking you to look into this matter, and if you could please put it on the next agenda, we'd really appreciate it. We know it's short timing, or if you could put it on the one after that, but this is a very important issue, not only to just our neighborhood, but to all the neighborhoods in Malibu, so we are really asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody, and you're followed by Yvonne and then Sam. Sorry, you guys are here to speak about a different item, so hold on. I messed up. It wasn't on 2A. 3A1, correct? Okay. So hold that thought. We're going to get there in 1 second, Melanie. You can just sit down right there and I'll call you up in a minute. City manager update.
Good evening. I just have a couple items to update. One, I just want to let the community and the council know that we're going to be extending the request for proposals that we had out for a consultant to assist with the school district separation. Want to see if we could get some other responses. We didn't get a whole lot, but partly because it was out over the holidays. And then just a reminder to the community that we are doing a test of our reverse 911 system on February 7th at 7 o'clock. And so we're hoping we can find out how well our system works when there is not an emergency, and find out what the receival rate of those calls are. So expect a call at 7 o'clock on February 7th. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Riva. Council, Lou, would you like to start?
Sure. First, I'm sorry Hub left, but I want to thank him for the book. We'll take a look at it. Craig, we have the same problems on Roca Chica, and one of the best solutions to it is called Riva Feldman, and then 10 minutes later they come and pick it up. But it's happened quite a few times recently, and we have to figure out why that's happening and what we're going to do about it. And Christy, as far as it's like a series of alphabets, the LCP, the MRCA, the SMMC. I know that Ken Kearsley has been talking to you about this.
That sounded a little bit like him for a second there. I think the planning department's pretty aware of it. Obviously, parks are permitted uses in most of our residential zones, so depending on what a property owner wants to do with the property, they may or may not need a coastal development permit for it. With respect to the easement, that is a civil matter. As you know, we only deal with public roads. The private easements, those who have interest in it. But I know the planning department is kind of all over that situation, so we're monitoring.
Thanks. All right, so as far as what I've been doing, last week I attended the League of California Cities meetings in Sacramento with Riva and Rick and Laura, and they'll tell you all about it in a minute. Riva and I also met with Assemblywoman Laura Friedman from Glendale, who's going to carry our rehab reform bill in the Assembly, and I think Senator Bill Allen was going to carry it in the Senate. We also met with Reyes Diaz of the Senate Health Committee about a hearing at the end of this month where these rehab and sober living issues are going to be brought up as part of a comprehensive discussion right at the Senate Health Committee, and he asked me to be on a panel about the overconcentration issue. So finally, after bringing this up for the last few years at least, the legislature is finally taking these issues seriously, and I'm excited to be part of it. I'll keep you informed.
Thank you, Lou. Jefferson?
Thank you. Skylar and I both had a meeting this afternoon about poison-free Malibu and the straw ban. We'll talk about that in the next few minutes. The meeting was successful. We learned a lot. We had a good presentation from Keon, and I look forward to hearing from her in the future. Thanks.
Laura?
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Just a couple of things. I did come to the Malibu Film Festival and saw Poisoning Paradise, which kind of goes along with what we've been hearing tonight. And it was mainly about GMOs in Kauai, but it was really good and very powerful movie made by a couple of our locals here in Malibu. Also went to our Council of Governments, our COG, with Riva, and I wanted to let Skylar know that he was appointed as the alternate for the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission as a COG. Jefferson is our representative. I also had an LA County Library Commission meeting going over the budget and some other things going on with our LA County Library. And then, as Lou mentioned, I was up in Sacramento last week. I am the current chair of the Environmental Quality Policy Committee, and we had two bills before us for our input, and the most important one was the offshore drilling. And a couple of months ago, this council, after I asked, we passed a resolution saying that we opposed the Trump administration's attempts to increase offshore drilling off the waters of California. So there are currently two bills, one in the Senate and one in the Assembly, opposing any drilling, and these bills would deny any new permits or licenses to move the oil for pipelines from the federal waters to through the state waters. California state waters go for 3 miles, and they are controlled by the State Lands Commission. So we did pass that overwhelmingly in support, and now will be sent to the board of the league. We also discussed a bill to add a fee on all water bills throughout the state of California, and this would help to clean up and allow safe drinking water for a small portion of California. These are disadvantaged communities that cannot afford to clean up their water. Around 30% of it comes from agricultural runoff, and around 70% of it is naturally occurring. So they are looking to add 95 cents per household per month. So it would be around $12 a year per person. So the bill did not get support as written from the committee, but I'll continue to give you updates on that. And then I did share with the committee our own city resolution on Energy Upgrade California. And that's the one that you can go and look at, small ways, large ways that you can have an impact on your energy usage and our energy usage throughout the states. And that's energyupgradeca.org. Just a couple of things that are upcoming in our city. On January 24th, we're going to have an earthquake preparation town hall meeting, and that's going to be in this room, I believe. And then we also have a student art show, and that's going to be February 10th from 11 to 5 at Malibu Village. And it's the Harry Borofsky Memorial Youth Commission's 9th annual student art exhibit. There'll be a free artist reception from 12 to 2 p.m. with refreshments. There'll be live art demonstrations, music, and a poetry reading by Malibu Poet Laureate Ricardo Ibarra. So you can, for information, you can go to malibucity.org art exhibit. And then our next Malibu Library Speaker Series, as I mentioned last time, is on Wednesday, January 31st at 7 p.m. And that's Take Every Wave, The Life of Laird Hamilton. And that's also in this room. And there'll be a Q&A afterwards with Director Rory Kennedy and writer Mark Bailey. So the RSVPs are at capacity, but as we know, a percentage of people RSVP, but they don't show up. So the RSVPs are closed, but if you arrive here before 6 p.m., you'll be put on a waiting list, and I'm sure that everyone will be able to get in. We do add seats for these speaker series. And then last but not least, the Malibu Cultural Arts Commission's first City Hall art exhibition of 2018 will be The Journey is the Destination, Safari with Dan Eldon. It will be opening on Friday, February 2nd, and it'll go through May 31st, and will feature more than 25 limited edition prints from the journals of the late artist and photojournalist Dan Eldon. And so the reception will be February 2nd at 5:30 p.m. There are no reservations are necessary, and these all will include his personal journals, letters, and more. And Dan worked as a photojournalist and an activist dedicated to telling the important and tragic stories of war and famine. He was killed while covering the war in Somalia in 1993 for a news agency. And Creative Visions was started by his mom and is a local nonprofit. And so this will be a really important show, and I hope to see a lot of people there. And I also wanted to thank Hub. One of the benefits of going to the same gym as Hub is that I already had one of the books. And it's actually on my nightstand in my list for my next book. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Rick?
I was just going to add one quick thing if I could. Thank you, Rick. Craig, sensors. just ask your neighbor to do sensors on those spotlights. It cuts it down. It's common sense. You know, that's how you can start a dialogue with a neighbor, coming up halfway and kind of doing a balancing act. I also attended the opening of the wildlife center up in Piuma, and it was a great event. There was one seal pup in there. Last year they had 25, and hopefully they don't have a lot, but the one pup is going to be released Sunday or Monday next week, and it's a great thing, and the DiCaprio Foundation funded it, and it was a great funding. The facility's terrific, and if you want to see an in-depth article, look at Malibu Surfside News last week. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Rick?
I also went to Sacramento with Lou and Laura, although I didn't see Laura and I didn't see Reba because they were all too busy. But I attended the new council members and new mayor's academy up there. And even though I'm salty and I've been here for a year, it was actually very good. A lot of good hints and tips. And actually a class given by Christy and her husband, which was kind of a skit of crazy, wacky council members going crazy, and it was all the examples of what not to do. It was very entertaining, actually. And I also, yeah, I was like, I almost saw something I recognize there. And I attended my first attendance at the League of California Cities Public Safety Policy Planning Committee, where they discuss all the priorities for having to do with public safety that they want the legislature to address. So that was good, and appreciate all the help up there, Lou. Been working on the next gen FAA stuff and getting a lot of information from people, and I gave the council members all a letter that was sent by the head of the roundtable to the regional. This is the LAX roundtable for community noise problems, to the local FAA administrator, essentially calling him out for not even talking to anybody anymore about it. So there's a lot of things going on there, and we may or may not possibly have some legal leg to stand on with the issues of the plane. So if you have complaints about the increase in air traffic, and I know it's more prominent in some areas than it is in others, don't hesitate to get in touch with City Council and let us know about it. And also thanks, Howard, for the book by Sage Rainbow, and I look forward to reading that. It's very nice of you to give that to us and very thoughtful. Appreciate you coming down here. Liz and Brittany, I hear you, and I kind of don't necessarily agree that it's just a neighborhood thing, work it out with your lawyer, because I've been where you are, and it's not fun, and it takes years, and it's extremely stressful on your neighborhood, and it takes a lot of money to deal with it in court. I think for our town, part of our responsibility as city council members is to look out for the rural tranquility of our residences and our communities. And with the 15 million visitors that come flowing in and out of Malibu, mostly flowing in and out without any sort of problems at all. They enjoy the beaches, they enjoy the mountains, they enjoy all the lovely open space that we've worked so hard to preserve. There are a few places, and we can't ignore them, where there are frictions with communities, with residential neighborhoods. And oftentimes it has to do with public easements that have trails or have accesses. A lot of times a developer may have leveraged a public easement that was given to an agency, let's say the Conservancy, in exchange for increasing the development size of their house without regard at all to the impacts on the neighborhoods. And that's something that I think we as the city can't ignore. In fact, we haven't ignored it because we've dealt with it in getting rid of the public trail dedication incentive program, which was designed by developers as a giveaway to developers that wasn't considered of the neighborhood. So I don't think it's really good enough for the city council to just ignore your problems. So I don't know exactly what we're gonna do, but I'm gonna think about it. And I hear you, and I think that all of your neighbors should come down here and do exactly what you said, what you did tonight. Let us know what's going on, because it's not fun. It's not fun at all, and I'm speaking as somebody who actually took this agency to court along with the city of Malibu. It's very expensive, very painful. It was worth it, but you have to protect your neighborhood, okay? So I hear you. Thank you very much for coming down.
All right, thank you, Rick, and everyone. Ann Buxey, I know you're not in the room anymore, but thank you very much for coming and sharing that piece of poetry with us. I think that definitely doesn't fall on deaf ears. I think it's something that we all appreciate hearing and recognizing the plight of some of the animals in our community and how us humans affect them. I know earlier there was some talk of the IPM policy at our environmental sustainability meeting, so hopefully, and also in just a meeting with Bonnie, our planner, and hopefully that'll come to the city at some point this year. Howard, thank you for the book. I will definitely read it. Craig, in regards to the model lighting ordinance, we are going through some staffing issues with the planning department and whatnot, and getting all that stuff on the docket and ready for council. And I think that that's one of the items that I would like to see before the summer. So I'm hopefully that we get something finalized on that to council before then. I know that the planning director indicated that that was possible, so we're working to get that done. And I think it's of all of our frustration that it didn't happen sooner. But more importantly, it will get done. It will be retroactive, and it will affect the community as a whole for allowing us to see the stars a little easier at night. I think Jefferson had a good point about the motion lights. I know that sometimes motion activated lights aren't people's favorite thing, and they like to have lights on timers, and they like to really light it up at night. But I would like to remind people of the cameras that you suggested, and also the fact that because your property is lit up like Las Vegas at night does not mean that it's any safer. We all know that there's many communities in the world that have plenty of lights at night, and crime remains through the roof. So oftentimes those dark areas become a lot safer. Elizabeth and Brittany, while I don't have all of the experience that Rick has in the courtroom fight with certain individuals or certain organizations, I think that this community really puts the neighborhood as a priority, and we want to see those neighborhoods remain intact. So anything like that that infringes like that, I think, can be something that impacts all of us, especially when it spills over onto the highway and everywhere else in the pocket neighborhoods like Sycamore. So we're going to get more information, and I know it's not a quick process. I think we all wish it was, but we'll hopefully be on the right side of history with that one as it moves forward. We had an environmental meeting earlier today where hopefully we'll have an ordinance here in the first meeting in February that can expand some of the environmental or items that are regularly distributed in this community, and how those can become more environmentally friendly. Hopefully we'll have support on that. And we also had an administration and finance meeting whereby we looked at some of the reallocation of some of the funds and some additional expenditures needed for the budget, which I think that we felt comfortable with. And hopefully out of that will come some additional staffing and whatnot that'll better position our city and our staff to be able to get some of the things like the MLO and other stuff done in a more timely fashion. And I really am glad that we were able to show Poisoning Paradise. I thought it was an awesome movie. I'm really spoke with Keely recently about it, and Pierce, and I just think that there's so many of these things that, I have a soft spot for Kauai because I spend a lot of time there, but whether it's the GMO stuff or the pesticide stuff or any of those things, I think those are all things that this community wants to see. I guess the pesticides probably used a lot less. And I also would definitely encourage you to come see Take Every Wave. It's an amazing movie about Laird, who spends a lot of time here in Malibu, and how the guy's an amazing waterman and inventor and unique individual. So I hope that you all appreciate that. And all right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, pulling item 3A1, and may I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with 3A1. And Christy, I believe that's just the second reading of an ordinance, but we do have 5 public speakers. So I don't know if you want to do a brief summary of that, other than it is what it is, and we'll start with the speakers.
This is a second reading, so the council's just, the only thing that before the council is whether or not it's exactly the same as what you already voted to introduce.
All right, so we'll start with our first public speaker, which will be Melody, followed by Yvonne, followed by Sam, followed by Dawn, followed by Heidi.
Good evening, council members. I'm speaking on behalf of 99 High Tide and the people that they serve and their request to do medical delivery or delivery. On a very practical level, medical clients such as myself, I have severe spinal cord injury. I stopped driving my car when I began using medical marijuana because we don't know about the impacts of it, and I didn't feel that I could responsibly drive. Many people are in my position. Others can't. They may have a child that's ill, or they may be in really serious stages of cancer, and it's just not sound for them to drive. Okay, on a second level, the business is on PCH. It's not practical. They don't have a big parking lot. Getting in and out of there is really tough, and it doesn't make sense. And on the third level, I've been a homeowner in Malibu for 20 years now. This is the worst business community I have seen anywhere in the United States. I'm a journalist and a nonfiction author, and this community breaks your back unless you're a franchise or you've got geese that lay golden eggs. It's just horrible here, both for the people the businesses are supposed to serve and the business owners. So please, don't break this business's back by taking away this one teeny little advantage they have. I'd also like to offer something to think about for in the future. On the level of being a journalist, I've been working with a national activist who started in Southern California by running medical marijuana to people dying in the AIDS movement. And she's working with a doctor, Dr. Brandy Cross, who's been working in medical marijuana for 20 years with children, with adults, with really ill people. I'd like to propose that we get together and work with these people with the experience and the heart and the compassion. Because if we just deal with the money and we don't have the compassion, it's not going to work. And start a community dialogue on safe ground where we can take this subject out of the stereotypes, out of the darkness, and into the light, and bring the community together to share with each other. People use this for their pets, for their children. We need to do better. Thank you.
Thanks, Melody. Yvonne, followed by Sam, followed by Dawn, followed by Heidi, followed by Linda. And if I said your name, please come and sit in the front row.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name's Yvonne Green. I am the founder of the 99 High Tide, the medical marijuana dispensary here in Malibu. I'm here tonight to see if there's any way that while you come up with your regulations for adult use, recreational, and commercial cultivation, that you allow the medical delivery to continue, because there are many patients that, as you can see here tonight in the audience, how difficult it is for them to come here and speak. At the Planning Commission, there was over 30 people that came to speak in favor of medical marijuana delivery and adult use recreational. At the City Council, you all saw over 30 people turned in slips, and only half were able to speak because, unfortunately, Jefferson had an emergency flight that nobody knew about. So everybody's time was cut in half, and half of the people weren't allowed to speak. Half of those people were seniors, our patients. Half of those people were veterans that came to speak on how important this medicine is to them. So I'm not asking anybody to go against any of their beliefs, whatever your beliefs on cannabis are. I'm asking you to please represent the residents of Malibu, who over 80% voted for Proposition 64. That means 80% of the voters of Malibu want recreational cannabis, they want commercial cultivation, and they want delivery. That's part of what the state laws that have been enacted are happening right now. To vote against this and to ban it all is going against the will of the people that you were elected to serve and take care of, in essence. Right now, there's so many people that can't be here tonight because the ones that do need to be heard are seniors who can't come, who did make a big effort in the last 3 hearings to come to. There are disabled people who can't come. One of them, I had a letter that I was going to read from her. I don't think I have time, but I'm just going to read the last part of it because this is an actual patient. Her name is Jennifer Strayton, and she has a disabled child who has intractable seizures. And she said that this is the end of her letter. By continuing to delay regulations or voting against cannabis, recreational adult use, and delivery, you must realize you're creating a black market in your own backyard. And a black market for cannabis makes this life-saving medicine unavailable to me and my son. Please think very carefully about your decisions you're making regarding these issues, because the wrong decision will hurt many innocent people, like my son and other gravely ill people. I'm asking that you please allow delivery until you come up with your regulations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yvonne. Sam, followed by Don Schmitz, followed by Heidi.
Good evening, Council. How's everybody doing? I wanted to talk really about delivery, and I know that the last City Council meeting was right before the holidays and everything was rushed, but I can't think of a good reason for how it would benefit the community to ban delivery. Delivery is only a benefit to the patients here in Malibu who aren't able to come to the store for whatever reason, various reasons, ailments and seniors and other things. And they've all asked for it since it's been banned. We were never actually banned, but since the delivery has been put on the agenda to be banned here in Malibu, we've had multiple patients who have complained to us. They probably called you guys and complained to you guys, say, why, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we banning delivery? We can't see, it only harms us. I can't see any benefit to the community to doing that. So we do request that you guys reconsider your ban on delivery that was up at the last City Council hearing. There was a case with the other dispensary where on the second reading a decision was reversed. So it is a possibility at this point, I believe, to reverse your last vote on the banning delivery. And so I'd really like you guys to consider that and look at the benefits, how it benefits the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Don?
Council members, good evening. Don Schmitz on behalf of the Malibu Community Collective, which is one of the 2 licensed dispensaries, medical cannabis dispensaries within the city. As you know very well, this is an industry that is the most tightly regulated business in the city of Malibu, hands down. And frankly, I think to no small extent, that's entirely appropriate. The conditional use permit has pages and pages of special conditions and reporting to the city, and we've been abiding by that. And it does, in fact, not allow us to do deliveries to our patients. But that's not necessarily the best option, and I would ask you to reconsider. You see, you do have delivery in the city of Malibu. My clients aren't doing it, but there are people that do deliver cannabis to the people that live here. And I'm not certain exactly where they're all coming from, but we believe there's people from over the hill and from the west side that are driving into our town and illegally making deliveries. Now, I think everybody in this room can see the logic as it pertains to why we changed the laws as voters in California. First for medical cannabis and then for recreational use. And one of the main reasons was because having the outright ban on it simply wasn't working. And it was breeding contempt for the law. And you are in danger of falling into that trap again, perhaps with the very best of intentions. No, I retract that. It's not perhaps. I know each and every one of you has the best of intentions. But you have 2 approved and permitted dispensaries. And the staff report that was before you was that only those 2 legal dispensaries with all the reporting requirements would be able to make those deliveries. We have adequate parking. It's not about parking, but it's about our patients' ability to come and drive down Pacific Coast Highway and get to the clinic. It is a matter of compassion. It is a matter of appropriateness in regards to this medicine. We're not talking about recreational use of cannabis. We're talking about a medical dispensary. I'd ask you to reconsider. Are you going to allow it to be a black market delivery system which other people that don't even live within our town avail themselves of? Or are you going to have the tightly regulated and professionally run dispensaries? I can certainly speak for my clients, and they are running a very professional dispensary. Are you going to work with them so that they can make those deliveries to their patients? I urge you, please, reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Heidi? And Heidi, you're followed by Linda. No worries. You just come up to the mic. We'll take our time. No rush.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm Heidi. This is my son, Dylan Apple, and obviously Dylan has a disability, he has cerebral palsy. He also has a seizure disorder and some behaviors, unfortunately, you've witnessed here tonight that put him on the autism spectrum. And I'd just like to speak out in support of 99 High Tide, our local dispensary that has been very, generous with us and also very helpful and informative and getting the medicine that Dylan needs. He takes a specific strain of medicine that, Yvonne and Sam carry especially for Dylan. And he needs delivery like many people in this community. Dylan's actually very lucky to have an adaptive van and to have, Dylan, do you want to say something? And to have a chauffeur myself. However, there are times when we just can't get out, or I'm not there and he's with a provider, a nurse, or a caregiver, and he needs his medicine, to keep the caregiver from going crazy, or for whatever reason. And having that delivery service is really important to us. It's very difficult to get Dylan out, despite his good fortune and being mobile through other people. But, we feel for the other people in the community, and there is quite a group of disabled people in the community. In fact, through the generosity of the city of Malibu, we meet here on Fridays here in this building with Lisa Schlagke's group. And, you've generously offered a place for us. We make it most of the time, but without his cannabis, due to his behavioral and other issues, the seizures, he probably wouldn't be able to go out at all. He's integrated into this community where he grew up, that it's been very good to him, and we just hope that you continue to have compassion and empathy for people like Dylan, who without their medicine not only couldn't function in society, very well, but and would probably be shut-ins, but for those people who are living in this community, who are not as able as Dylan is to go out at all sometimes, and to be able to have, their medicine that makes them, functional and accepted. And thank you so much for accepting him tonight. He's a little low on his medicine level right now. Maybe you, Yvonne and Sam, can fix that for us. But thank you.
Heidi and Dylan, thank you very much for coming down tonight. Linda?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Linda Vallejo. I work as an architect. 90% of the dispensaries that have come into our office. I've been in the grow houses, and I'd have to say most of them are operating before they get their permits. We deal a lot with file processing. My issue is, well, let's cut the crap. It's all about money. That's the bottom line, okay? District 13, which is LA, I could give you the names of our senators and the people that we have in government officials in California that own the majority that are opening up these dispensaries. The problem I have here in Malibu is the vetting process. This is not a personal issue. I'm not going to get into an emotional thing like I know a lot of people have come up here, and I feel for this woman and her son. It's not about the medical marijuana. It's about the money that's involved in this. First of all, the vetting process, let's take High Tide. High Tide's manager had a rap sheet, which I have a copy at home, okay, of criminal offenses. It's against the law, okay? Whatever they want to do is fine. However, they were never vetted by Malibu until it was disclosed, and covertly, he's no longer the Malibu, he's no longer the manager there. Word on the street has it that he's still managing the grow house. I don't know, but I have the copy of the rap sheet. So I have a problem with this vetting. I kind of don't have trust in several members of the council because this vetting should have been done a long time ago. But when you have friends in high places, they look the other way. So the thing with this here is that High Tide has always been delivering. When they were closed down in Venice, they were advertising all over the place. We're still delivering. Look on the internet right now. They are advertising Malibu location, High Tide, delivery. Delivering without this being even vetted. If you don't believe me, do your research. That is true. I can prove everything that I'm saying. So the bottom line is that the council needs to be responsible and do the research. It's all over. I mean, it's all over the internet. It's not an article about them. It's their website. They have many different websites, and it says delivery only. Check it out. I'm against this delivery process in Malibu because where's it going to end? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Council?
You're back at the table?
Yes.
So just to remind you that the way the process for adopting ordinances work is that when we introduce them on that meeting, we've widely noticed that there's going to be a public hearing. So everybody from either side, all sides, any opinion, has an opportunity to come down and participate. And then after we finish the hearing and you introduce the ordinance, in this case, we actually had 2 hearings. We continued it to a second night. Then it goes on the consent calendar for adoption. And again, you're only looking at whether or not it's exactly the same as the one that you introduced. If you wanted to reconsider anything or add anything substantively, you wouldn't be able to discuss that tonight because it's not on your agenda. You'd have to direct that staff notice a new hearing. So your choices are to adopt or direct staff to notice a new hearing.
I'd like to see if I could get support for staff to notice a new hearing. I think that because it was so disjointed, because we did have to have 2 meetings, because I think that I've certainly heard from people that have been very distraught about this, the fact that they won't be able to get deliveries. And I think, I can't, maybe it was Sam who said it, I really think this is about compassion. And I mean, many other things too, but this is about the people that need this the most. This is about the people, you know, we were talking about the neighborhood and making sure that we stand up for our neighborhoods, which we need to. We also need to stand up and help those people that have the most difficulty helping themselves. So I'd like to see if I can get 2 other people to agree.
Well, I would agree to bring it back and have a further discussion on it, but I don't know if there's just 2 of us.
Well, there's always hope.
You know, I would just add that I think that Heidi and Dylan is a perfect example of the kind of patient that this community should be servicing through delivery. And by making that more difficult for a patient like that in our community to get the medicine that they need is a very foolish and very poor decision-making legislative process for this community. So I would just let that stay in the record that I strongly believe that we should have delivery of medical cannabis and one day recreational as well. And we are really just not even paying attention to what's going out there on the black market, and we're enabling that to continue, and I think that's bad policy. So I would think that we should reconsider that and bring that item back. But if we don't have consensus on that, then we can't do that.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would agree, that wants to look at the parent who can't get the kid in the car, who can't take their elderly parent out, who has to take their son and bring them in the van and bring them all the way down?
I'll make comment. I see it daily, and I do see needs. I see some of the patients that Sam and Yvonne have, and it's difficult right now. I think we need to explore this in the future when we have a better understanding. And right
So
now
are you
we have
agreeing that we should
right
bring it
now we
back?
have something in front of us that we were asked to vote on, and Christy opined on it and gave us some detail. And at this point, we did go through the process. We did hear a number of speakers, and I'm in favor of moving it forward.
But you just said that you could see.
No, I said I'm aware of it. I'm aware of their difficulties. It's not like I don't have
But you don't
passion.
want to find a solution for it?
Not now.
Okay.
I'm speaking to that. So I understand, and I see the need for the passion, and I don't have a problem with the medical marijuana itself. It's just, it's too new, it's too fresh, and one speaker said we haven't done enough work about it. So I want to see.
What haven't we done the work about? Delivery?
Delivery is the big issue. And then if somebody makes a statement, I'd like to find out about it. And right now we have a motion in front of us, and I'm in favor of the motion. We had the debate earlier, but I wanted to tell you that I do have a passionate point in my heart and in my mind for some of these folks. It's not like I don't. And that was my statement. Thank you.
I guess my reaction is that I hear you saying, and I appreciate that you have compassion for these people, but you're not willing to find a solution, even though we did have a discussion about it. So you're obviously not willing to use this as a solution that many experts, doctors, and many, many other cities and areas have agreed to. We can control it, we can make it once a day, we can put a lot of things on it. So all I think Skylar and I are asking is, maybe since our last meeting when we, not we, but you, you and two other people, approved this, that maybe from hearing from other people or hearing tonight, that you'd be willing to say, you know what, there is compelling evidence and there is compelling reason to allow a very controlled delivery, and I'm willing to hear that again and to come back.
I'd like to second Jay's motion and tell you, a lot of cities, since the last time we heard this, of the 88 cities in Los Angeles County, I think 86 of them have completely banned it. And medical marijuana is not even in existence in half of those cities, in most of those cities. I'm telling you, all those small cities, Los Angeles is definitely there, Long Beach is on there, so many of the other cities throughout the entire San Gabriel Valley. Yes, that's right. They are banned, absolutely banned.
But LA is giving out its first permits for recreational.
Los Angeles is one of the 88 cities.
Oh, you said LA.
LA and Long Beach are probably the only ones that actually have done this. All the rest of them have banned it. In addition to that, Malibu has two medical marijuana facilities, and most of those cities completely ban medical marijuana.
So you want to go back to the dark ages and get rid of medical marijuana
I
now?
want us to vote on this motion. That's what I want to do.
And I do want to just add one thing. I really believe when people come up here and say things about people that work in places, you better have all the facts in front of you, and you better have all of that, because I personally don't appreciate it when people make insinuations. And if you're going to say something about somebody, have the facts. So that's all I want to say. And I just have to add that I'm extremely disappointed in this council. I feel, as I said before, that we're going backwards.
I think we're going forwards. It may not be going at the velocity that you would like, but we're going forwards. And as I said before when we talked about this, we're still in the, as a nation, we're kind of in the nether world between it totally being illegal and totally being legal, but we're moving forward. And I think that it's not a lack of compassion that you see up here, it's probably a little bit of caution. And I'm comfortable with the vote that I took last time, and I second your motion to approve this agenda item.
I don't know if it got seconded.
I don't know if he made a motion. I made a motion that seconded Laura's motion, so you guys would have to make a first and a second for.
I'll make a motion to adopt this.
I'll second the motion.
I'll third it.
Just do a roll call.
Councilmember Lamont?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes, 3A1.
Councilmember Rosenthal?
Emphatic no.
Mayor Pro Tem Mullen?
Yes.
Mayor Peak?
No.
Motion fails.
No, motion carries.
Carries?
I got 3 yes.
No? You said no.
I said no.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
3 yeses, 2 nos.
1 emphatic no. 2 emphatic no's. All right. Well, see, that's, I guess, part of the great thing about democracy. But we'll just see next time the voters put something else on the ballot that they want to have done and how quickly we can get it done. All right. Now we're at 4A.
This has been continued.
Now we're at 4B.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item before you is an annual item. We receive an award of funds from the Community Development Block Grants, and the Community Development Commission requires us to submit any approvals to them for the 2018-2019 fiscal year by February. As you may recall, we receive about $45,000 annually from this fund. Of that, 15% is allowed to be made available for public service programs within the community. And there are very few programs that qualify. And in fact, pretty much the only one is the Malibu Community Day Labor Exchange Program. And so we are recommending that you allocate $6,839 to the labor exchange for fiscal year 2018-19. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one question. Is this the balance of this money, is that what we were talking about using for earthquake kits, or is that something else?
The money that we're using for earthquake kits does come from this funding, but it is capital money that has built up over time, so it was not this actual allocation.
Okay, I'd like to move this item.
I'll second.
I was just going to ask if there's anything else that we can use the remaining funds for at this time.
The remaining capital funds?
Yeah.
There is an item that we had to postpone doing, which was a capital project regarding purchasing and moving the existing labor exchange trailer. So we would anticipate that we're holding the remaining funds to do that once the college project.
Good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now at 4C. Thank you very much, Lisa. Updated developer fee program for the benefit of the Consolidated Fire Protection District of Los Angeles County. Reva?
That was continued to February 12th.
I knew that. Point Doom Neighborhood Watch Signs.
So I don't have a whole lot to add other than what's in the staff report. The Point Doom community has asked to install 4 neighborhood watch signs And the item before you would allow for the placement of the city's logo on the signs, and the city would purchase and install the signs and be reimbursed by the Point Dume Neighborhood Watch. So that's the item.
Question? So these are all going on city-owned land or Caltrans right-of-way or?
City right-of-way.
City
All
right-of-way.
within the city right away.
And they want Protect Point Dume Malibu? Like, we don't know it's Malibu, or is that what
This was the wording that the neighborhood asked us to put on, and we can certainly provide
I would think that
change if you'd like
the
to.
wording should just say Protect Malibu. I don't think that there needs to be
Or,
a distinction for the neighborhood, and I think it could be a sign that's used universally in any other neighborhood that wants it.
I would agree with that, but I also would like to go back to them and you know, we could put it in different areas, protect Big Rock, protect, you know, those kinds of things. So it does, when you kind of name something, it can have kind of a psychological effect, like it's a real name and place. But
as opposed to it not being a real name and place.
You know what I mean? In a more general way when you're saying Malibu, but I either way is fine with me.
But isn't the Point Dume Neighborhood Watch paying for these signs?
Yes, they are.
Well, I'm, as the only Point Dume resident, the second Point Dume resident that's up here, I would just defer to the community. If that's what the Neighborhood Watch wanted, that's what they should get. But I would like Riva to talk with them about that, and I just don't want there to be some sort of like elitist association with that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, will do.
Real quick, I'm sure all three Ramirez voted in favor of it, all three of the districts inside Point Dume?
Those are just beaches.
Yeah, the beach key lot.
There would actually be 5 different Rivieras. If we were
Okay,
looking
so
at that.
Rivieras.
But I don't think that the Rivieras voted. What I think what happened was a group of residents in the Point Dume neighborhood, kind of headed by Pamela Ulick, if I'm correct, got together. There was a couple of different meetings kind of about crime and those kinds of things. And one of the things that came out of that was organizing this neighborhood watch. And there was participation in those meetings from our volunteers on patrol, as well as the sheriff's department. And I believe Susan was at one of the meetings. Myself, I was at, I think, 1 or 2 of them that I was able to attend. And I think that I just wanted to really go on the record that if there's any of the other communities out there that want to start one of these programs that don't already have it, that the city is, you know, more than willing to facilitate a meeting if you want to do it here at City Hall or in your community, and we can get some representatives there to help organize that. So I would vote
So
to
do we have
support
to move this, or just I mean, do we have to make a motion?
Just the staff recommendation.
Okay, I'll move the staff recommendation.
I think we're all in favor of that.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Coastal erosion update. Craig. And Michael.
Good evening, Mayor Peak and council members. First, I'd like to introduce Mike Phipps. Mike Phipps is the ESD consulting. He works for Cotton Shires, and Cotton Shires is the consultant for ESD that does the plan review for both geotechnical review and coastal engineering reviews for both the planning phase and the building plan check phase. So Mike has a lot of background and understanding about coastal erosion, so I invited him here tonight to help participate with the presentation. Just a brief background. If council will recall, back in June, there were a number of public comment speakers, Alan Sarlo and a number of other surfers and different people that came to council talking about the erosion at the Adamson House and the change at the beach break at Surfrider Beach. And council had directed staff to come back with like an update on coastal erosion. So we're here tonight just to give you kind of a primer on what's going on in coastal erosion, and then the staff will make a recommendation at the end of that for council to consider. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike and get the presentation going.
Thank you, Craig. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. So coastal erosion is definitely occurring here in Malibu. There was a study done most recently in 1994, so it's been quite a while since this has been looked at in detail. And that study predicted that there would be a net long-term erosion rate in Malibu, and so I think we're beginning to see the effects of that. You know, just by simple observations of people who have surfed in the same spot for 30 years. I really appreciate that kind of anecdotal evidence. We've put together a couple of slides here just talking about what goes on along the coast. Some of this may be familiar to you, some of it may not be. Along Malibu coastline, we've got 4 different backshore types: dunes, cobble beaches, bluffs, and coastal armor-backed beaches. These beaches all behave differently depending on whether you have armoring, whether you have a bluff in the way, whether you have dunes. The sediment supply comes and goes depending on these different situations. Tides are the thing that mainly causes fluctuation along the coastline. Wind is the primary phenomena that is creating waves that are hitting our shoreline. This is a diagram showing how wind actually generates waves coming into the shore. We stole some of these slides from a presentation that was made up in the County of Ventura recently, so I want to give credit to Dave Revelle and Moffitt and Nickel. And then we have waves, which are what's primarily causing coastal erosion along the coastline. I review a lot of coastal engineering reports, and a lot of what we look at are some of these features here, such as where is sea level, what are the tide levels, and what kind of wave uprush do we get on beaches. I think one of the more important things that's happening is that the sea level is definitely rising, and you've heard other presentations about that recently. And as the sea level rises, all of this activity that goes on is going to really move more landward, and it's going to cause more erosion. Here's another diagram just showing some of the beach profile definitions and some of the terms that we use. If you go out and watch the beach over the course of a year, I think one of the biggest things that people observe happening is that the sand disappears and the sand comes back. During the winter months, the sand usually leaves the beaches and it gets stored out here in these longshore bars. And in the summer months, with more fair weather, the beaches tend to rebuild themselves. So at any given moment, if somebody goes out and looks at the beach, go out there again another time, and it's 4 or 5 feet lower, people go, "My gosh, the beach is eroding." But there's a seasonal oscillation that occurs, and the mean high tide line in Malibu migrates typically up to 80 feet on a lot of the beaches that we have. In one place in particular, which is the point at Malibu Creek, it oscillates up to 150 feet, 200 feet. One of those reasons is because there's a big sediment supply. That's one of the biggest sediment supply areas. This diagram shows kind of the seasonal beach profile change that occurs I was just describing, where the beach profile may look like this blue line at one point during the year, and once the storms come, they erode the beach back to the storm profile, and they store the sand in the offshore bars. And this process just goes back and forth over the years. You really have to study it for a long period of time to understand whether there's actually a net erosion occurring. But the last time that study was done was 1994, so it may be time to do that again. This is a map of the historical mean high tide lines adjacent to Malibu Lagoon, and I put this up just to show you that the oscillation of the mean high tide line, which is measured at the same elevation, here it moved 200 feet between 1928 and 1961. So in 1928 it was way in closer to the land, and in 1961 it was way out here. That's 200-foot difference. So Again, a lot of the observations people make are that the beach is eroding, and maybe mistaking that for just the normal oscillation of the beach that happens. Here's some good examples of what we've observed happening out along the coastline. This first set of pictures is the colony, and here we have super elevated ocean, high tide, and waves crashing onto the structures with the staircases hanging in the air, and then a few months later those staircases are completely buried because the beach has rebuilt itself. So this is a good example of that seasonal oscillation. This is another good one. This is back in 1988 where we had an El Nino year and a lot of high tides and significant weather events. So we had water levels coming right up to the homes, waves crashing onto the homes, and this structure here is the same one taken in this photo only 1 month later. The beach had completely rebuilt itself already. So just examples of how the beach oscillates. I think the biggest problem that we face here in Malibu is a sediment deficiency. And this is just an example of a sediment study that was done up in Santa Barbara County, where they looked at the whole sand shed and made some determinations as to where sediment is being lost. And this study in Santa Barbara determined that they had a 40% reduction in the sediment supply just because of damming of the rivers and shoreline armoring. And in Malibu, since the 1920s, when really development began, the sediment has been dammed up by 19 different debris basins that were constructed between Caltrans and the County of Los Angeles. And things like Ringe Dam in Malibu Canyon and a couple of other reservoirs, those are just choking off the sediment supply. And even development regulations that cause us to not send any sediment away from a site under development anymore. When in the old days that sediment would have washed off into the storm drains and into the ocean. These are the issues that we face and need to figure out solutions. Here's some examples of what's done in other communities. We don't have the luxury of having a harbor or a marina that we can dredge, but in Santa Barbara they do dredging, and in Ventura they do dredging. Channel Islands Harbor, this is a spectacular photo. 1 month later, this area was completely filled in with material from dredging. So it's yes, I believe so. So dredging is not an option here, but we need to look at other possible beach nourishment approaches. The only thing that happens in Malibu is episodic sediment input, and historically we would have a fire, and then you would have the heavy rains a year later, and all that sediment washed down onto the highway. And in the old days, it used to be dumped into the ocean. The material that collected behind the debris basins would be dumped into the ocean at specific places, different times. I don't believe that's done anymore, and so that's further choking off the sediment supply that naturally would have made it into the ocean. What's happened up in Montecito is a good example, where you had a fire and a flood sequence, and I believe they are dumping some of the materials that have washed down from that fire into the ocean to help the sediment supply. So in conclusion, we're recommending a coastal vulnerability assessment be done, and it's primarily because the issue of sea level rise is very significant at this time. It has taken on greater significance in recent years with more recent studies, and it was considered in the 1994 report, the last time this coastline was studied in terms of sedimentation, but I think it's a much more important factor now. increased storm activity, what happens during El Niños. Just for example, in 2016, the sea level rose 10 inches locally out here in Santa Monica Bay, just because of the warmer water. It was a temporary thing, but if that occurs in conjunction with some large coastal wave activity coming in, you're going to get some pretty quick avulsion on the beach, or temporary erosion. And then lastly, we have a sediment source deficiency, and so this assessment should include sediment source availability, looking into that. I think that's it.
I'd just like to add briefly to the presentation there. I did a presentation at the Beach Ecology Coalition a couple of weeks ago on Malibu's plastic bans, and one of the presentations there was a study of sediment transport around Point Doom, the headlands there, and the effective headlands. And one of the things that I learned from that report was the amount of sediment deficiency, as Mike is alluding to, that really occurs. And then another interesting fact is at Point Doom, there's a very large canyon that was formed about 10,000 years ago, maybe longer, and much of the sediment that's coming down the coast gets deposited into that canyon. Very little of it gets around the corner at Point Doom. And so that just increases the deficiency of sediment supply that's available. There's been a number of studies, just as Mike alluded to earlier, about how what man does to keep sediment out of the ocean on our projects, our sediment basins and everything. And I learned a lot about that. It's really incredible that we have stopped the sediment supply, not just here locally, but throughout California and the United States, all the coastlines. We're just not allowing the sediment to get into the ocean to replenish our beaches. And that's a challenge that we're going to have to face. So with that, like we were saying, we'd like to go out for an RFP for a coastal vulnerability assessment that would help both in our sea level rise analysis and policy making. And so what we're recommending is just to go ahead and look into approving an RFP that we would bring back to council to consider if they want to move forward with that.
Well, I would like to see the council do something like that and do it over a 10-year period where we could get something that's reoccurring, because I know that we have a baseline from a certain amount of time in the early 90s or mid-90s. I would like to see what happens over the course of many years, because that's going to give us a data set that the city is going to be able to rely on as we move into the future. I think it's very informative, the things that we've heard tonight. And I think that we all know that there's certain areas in the community that lose their sand in the summer. There's certain areas that gain it, and vice versa in the winter. But there's no question that as someone that spends a lot of time in the water, it seems like in certain areas there's a lot less beach. But maybe that's just anecdotal evidence. Or maybe that's my reality. Jefferson?
Thank you, Skylar. I would like to support the procurement of an RFP, or at least a couple of firms coming forward. I would hope that in that you could mention that Moffitt and Nichols has already opined on some of this, that we could use that as a baseline. In '94, that survey did not have the satellite technology that we do today. In '94, they didn't have the ENSO data. So there's a number of areas that we've improved on with data collection. And I'm sure if the council sees fit to approve this RFP and send it out, that in the RFP, the data that we're looking for over a 3 or a 5 year period, I think 10 years is going to be a little long for us to stretch, but I think it has to occur over a 2 or 3 year period. I know it's a bit more expensive, but we're talking about protecting the beach homes here in Malibu, protecting the property values, as well as protecting the asset of the public visiting our beaches. So I'm sure that this will be looked at favorably by the community in general and by the 13 million people that visit Malibu over a year. So I'm in support of this, and I wish you luck if we can pass it. And I'd like to be part of that as helpful researcher with you. Thanks.
Maybe the state, in regards to their beautiful Highway 1 that runs through the city, would probably have a bit of an interest in that study as well.
Well, they can pay for an amicus brief.
I'd like to support the 2 experienced watermen on this council. Let's say that's what we should do. But I also want, I just got this thing in my box before from the Coastal Commission. There's a public hearing on Wednesday, February 7th, which is a consistency determination by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for Malibu Creek Ecosystem Restoration Project, including removal of the Ringe Dam, excavation of 780,000 cubic yards of sediment impounded behind the dam, nearshore placement of clean excavated sand, landfill placement of remaining sediments, and modification or removal of upstream aquatic habitat barriers at Malibu Creek watershed. And that's Wednesday, February 7th. So
And where is that meeting at, Lou?
It's in Cambria.
Cambria.
Yeah.
Nice of them to
Yeah, of
hold
course.
it real locally.
I'm thinking that maybe we should like look into sucking some of that sand out of the bottom of that canyon off of Point Doom. I mean, we could possibly do
Dredge
the
it.
Replenishment of the GAD. You know, there's probably a ton of it down there.
Yep, the jihad. Yep.
But yeah, I support the
It's
RFP.
out of our
list, too.
provision, though, of jurisdiction.
I think that canyon is the one that people saw those like kind of different colored pictures of, and it was, you know, aliens home and
That's closer to
the whole,
Encinal.
yeah. Is that closer to Encinal? Oh, okay. Yeah, I totally support this, and I would support it even more if it was part of a whole climate action plan that we were, you know, developing for the city. The city of Culver City has been working on that and doing a lot of work. They have different issues than we do. They're built on a lot of liquefaction and all those kinds of things, but I really would like to see this be the first step in a whole climate action plan for our city.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of parts.
Sea level rises.
Yeah, there is a lot of parts of that. That's why we're saying sea level rise, and it's a connection with climate change, and there'll be other studies coming along. But today was just an offer because we were doing the coastal erosion update to start with that and look at some of these other processes. I just want to mention also Los Angeles Beaches and Harbors have been very helpful. They did a risk assessment for the beaches because that's their biggest asset. And so we can combine with some of the research that's already done and provide a report and be able to utilize a lot of this other information that's already out there from recent studies, not just back in '94.
And I think the study that you and I were talking about, Craig, also that I think I sent you from UCLA, the iOS Center there, that they've been doing a lot of the sea level rise and looking at that. So there's a lot of good data and a lot of, you know, local people doing work on this. So this is great. Thank you very much.
So I think, do we have a consensus on them bringing back an RFP? I know there was a couple different timelines. I'm okay with a 2 to 3 year thing, looking at that amount of data. It'd be awesome to get something that could get some sort of access to a lot of the satellite images from NASA, or get in contact with someone there where we could, you know, put some monitoring or something like that together. Is that what you need, Reva?
I just want to clarify, did you want to see the RFP before we submit it, or we can just bring back the agreement once we select
Just
one?
bring back, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we need to see it, but I think that it's important that we have climate-related language in there, sea level rise-related language in there, and then protection of the assets that were referenced.
And
Okay,
as much data that's already been collected, assembled with it, so that we save the researchers time so that they don't have to explore areas. I'd rather have the details of Malibu 90265 prominent, and then the rest of the data is kind of an ancillary and support for those decisions and those the information factors that they'll bring forward.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, it's almost 8 o'clock. I think we're gonna make a motion to adjourn. We do?
You have one more item.
Oh, my bad. Okay, let's go. I'll make it through quick. I promise. I apologize. Thank you very much for coming and waiting that out. Okay, PUC Commission draft resolution in regards to this. So we have, you know, joined the CCA for LA County, and basically what there's certain things that are going on where they're trying to now make it more difficult for cities to do those kinds of things. And I think that we should be supporting the resolution that opposes them changing that kind of stuff, because here they've gone and, you know, clearly made a leap of faith to get things that are more renewable, more accessible to everybody. And we know that they're out there, and then they're retracting that and trying to make it more difficult.
I'll second.
All in
I'd
favor?
like to add to that. Oh, yeah, I'll favor, but I'd like to also add that this is very pertinent and very now, and I'm glad you recognize it, and I would support it 100%.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Atticus's memory and
Dick Joy.
thank you.
Atticus Anderson and Dick Joy. Thank you, Heather. Everybody, have a good evening.